Yes, pocket gophers. Anybody know what gophers are? Have you seen gophers before? Yes, with love, you say, yes, of course I know gophers. I love gophers. I was so lucky at Tarleton to get to work with gophers. I studied, and I know useful information. I use it daily. Go, hey, way to go! Just like we practiced, just like we practiced. The species I worked on was all of East Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And what I did as a graduate student, I would drive around, I'd see somebody's yard that would have mounds, knock on the door and say, "Can I collect your gophers?"
They say, please.
And they say yes, after a little bit of curiosity, I'm sure. But can I blow your minds with something real quick? One lady's backyard in Canton, do you know where Canton is? Van Zandt County, a little bit southeast of here. In her backyard, which was probably the size of this room, we caught 20 gophers, which is a good day. There was more genetic diversity in her yard than in the entire state of Oklahoma for gophers. We were studying the DNA, the genetics of these gophers. Well, so there's many creatures that are going to wait for me in the afterlife. There's about 200 gophers that are waiting for me. We'd dig a hole down to an entrance, and then we'd set up this trap. Oh, it's just horrible. Close your eyes if you need to. It has two spikes like this. It had a trigger right here, and the idea is that when they sort of dig back out to the exit, dig back that way, they hit the trigger, and the two spikes bust the diaphragm. You want to borrow it? It's called a Maccabee trap. The worst were the ones that we would trap that would have just like a leg that was impaled. And we'd find them the next morning with fire ants just eating. I know, they're waiting for me. I promise, they're waiting for me in the afterlife. But I studied the genetics of gophers. It was phenomenal. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Fascinating stuff. After I got my graduate degree at Tarleton, I worked at, yes, ma'am. Yeah. 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 So wouldn't it be great if I could just do an ear swab or something for the gophers? We used liver tissue. So it's hard to borrow liver tissue. So it's one of those that we had to trap them and then get the liver tissue out to do our genetic analysis. Bummer. Again, I apologize. Every night when I wake up like in a sweat, I think of the gophers. I think, oh, do they remember? Ugh. So I worked after I got my master's degree. Then I was a teacher at Weatherford College in biology, zoology, and botany. After I did that, I worked at a place called BRIT, Botanical Research Institute of Texas, one of my favorite places to work. And my buddies, sometimes I don't know if I told you all this, my buddies would bust my chops about working at BRIT. I said, you know what? I filed for 8 hours today. That is what I did at BRIT. I filed for 8 hours. And they'd say, oh, what a miserable job. But I filed plant specimens collected by Ferdinand Lindheimer, collected by the hands of George Engelmann, collected by these legendary botanists, collected plants on the east side of Mount Kilimanjaro, collected in 1830 in the Indian Territory. The coolest specimens. It was awesome. And then I would go out and collect, and my little specimens sit right next to Ferdinand Lindheimer's, right next to Julian Reverchon's, right next to these legendary botanists. Great job. After that, I worked for the city of Mansfield, as Cindy was mentioning, with Nick, was a nature educator, and now I work for Texas Parks and Wildlife in the city. And much like when I worked at Brit, my buddies would they do bust my chops. They tell me about working at the rainforest. They tell me about working in far West Texas catching bats. They tell me about working in Costa Rica. And I say, this is my rainforest. Name the village. Anybody know the village? Dallas. Yes, this is the village of Dallas. And I say, this is where I work. I work in the urban ecosystem. And some people think of just cars. You think of the noises of the city. This is what exists there. But are there critters here? Hmm? Do you think that there are animals in a place like this? Let's play a game. Let's play a game real quick. I want you to think of an animal. We'll focus just on animals, even though plants and fungi are there too. I want you to think of an animal that you would expect to find right here. Okay, I want you to think of it. Think of it. On the count of three, and if you're watching from home, I need you to do this too. On the count of three, I want you to say that critter out loud, all right? So the question is, what type of critters are still here? Ready? One, two, three. Perfect. They're all there. They are all there. So there is a ton of nature left in the urban ecosystem. So far, we've documented, and I say we collectively, naturalists, citizen scientists, have documented over 10,000 species just within the 9 counties that make up DFW. How many can you name? Hmm. How many? 134 to go. In other words, there is tremendous diversity that exists here in Dallas Fort Worth. We are quite lucky to share this ecosystem with so many critters. One of the things I've really gotten into is nocturnal biodiversity. Mothing. Mothing is awesome. It is so much fun. You put up a light, you put up a sheet, sometimes you'll have a beverage of choice, and you will wait for biodiversity to come to you. And let me tell you, there is tremendous biodiversity that exists at night. When we go to sleep, when we close our eyes, that's when critters wake up. That's when they do various things. So one of the things I've gotten really into is nocturnal biodiversity. When I worked at Britt, I lived in an apartment off 7th Street in Fort Worth, so pretty deeply urban area. And on the floor of the third, I was on the third floor, and I would out on the balcony, I would put up a black light, a sheet, and I would just wait for biodiversity to come. Here's a little example of one of the nights of critters that came. I'd like to draw your attention to this little guy there. Now, that is my human finger, so this is a little tiny thing, but let me bump up what this creature looks like. That is what, thank you for saying that. And I'll repeat it. You just said, oh my goodness. Yes, that is the right answer. This is a cool little insect called Apache. Apache digeri is the name of this little leafhopper. It was found on the third floor balcony off 7th Street in downtown Fort Worth. We share the urban ecosystem with so many cool critters. How many grasshoppers can you name? Hmm? How many grasshoppers can you name? Before I got into it, I thought there were 3. There was the brown one, the green one, and the brown with green on it. So those are the 3 species. So far, we've documented 117 species of grasshoppers, crickets, katydids, and such. Thank you so much, Cindy. That works out great. Let me draw your attention to this little guy. Doesn't look like too much. This is actually a blind cricket. The genus for this is Myrmecophilus. My wife and I have a healthy relationship. I keep reminding my therapist, we have a healthy relationship. One of the things that we do together, my wife is really into quilts, into fabrics. She loves quilting. She loves fabrics, all of these things. I'm not really into those things. I can appreciate them. But one of the things that we do is I drive her to a fabric store. She goes into the fabric store, and I go to the ditch. I go to the ditch outside of the fabric store, and I flip over logs and I look for bugs. Outside of a fabric store in Arlington was this little tiny guy, Myrmecophilus. Let me tell you about what it does. This cricket, this is my picture of it. There it is. This cricket goes to an ant's nest. It rolls around in the stank, in the pheromones, the smell of the ants. It crawls down into the ant's nest and it eats their turds. This is what this cricket does. And it is living outside of a fabric store in Arlington in the ditch. Pretty amazing. What do you think the ants do? What do the ants do to this foreign creature? Nothing. The light does not penetrate. So they don't use their eyes, they smell around. It smells like one of us. It hangs out at the bathroom for a while, but if it smells like one of us, eating their turds outside of a fabric store in Arlington. I'm going to get into the question of who cares in a little bit. I'll get to that question. Um, but isn't it pretty dang cool that we share this creature, or we share the urban ecosystem with a critter like this? Sure. So these are all the ants, and it's the light reflecting off the abdomens of the acrobat ants right down here. So there's the blind cricket, and this was from flipping over the log. So it was an ant's nest, and this guy was down there eating their turds. Name them if you know them. Anybody know this? Crackle. Very good, and said with love. I think you said it with love. Grackle's a great example of an urban bird. These guys do quite well living with us and amongst us. What does a grackle eat? Cheetos, Tostitos, taquitos, Doritos. They will eat all of these things, and they eat the bugs that come to those things. One of their well, actually, you guys tell me, what's one of their favorite places to hang out? Parking lots, the Walmart parking lot. You better believe it. They're at those big parking lots. They have every once in a while, there's a tree. They know what they're doing when they poop on your car. Trust me. So there are those trees, but there's also all the refuse, the trash all around that they will utilize. That's part of our urban critters. They are adaptable. They will be living, in some cases, right there with us. Name it if you know it. The general, very good. The specific one, well done. Rat snake. This is a rat snake. 9 times out of 10, if I get a call from a person that mentions a snake in the house, it is a rat snake. What does it also tell me? You got rats. The rat snake is a bioindicator. It tells me that there's not just popcorn in your house, that there's not chips and food. There are other critters that rat snake is going for, like our little mouse and our rats too. So it is a bioindicator. Name it if you know it. Actually, let's do this. A show of hands. How many of you, let's take it this way. How many of you like squirrels? Anyone? Show of hands. Oh, good. A few people do. Those of you that did not put up your hands, I too did not like squirrels for a long time. And if you've never experienced squirrels up in the attic, crawling around at 2:30 in the morning, oh, what a pleasant experience that is. I used to hate squirrels. I used to hate squirrels. I would put at my parents' house when I lived with my parents, I would fill up the bird feeder with bird seed, and one of these jerks came and ate all the bird seed in my bird feeder. What the heck? So my dad and I finally put up a little baffle underneath the bird feeder. We put a PVC pipe underneath that, and then a little electric wire at the base of that. Squirrels could no longer get into the bird seed. And you know what happened? I started liking squirrels. Squirrels have personality. Oh my goodness, they have tremendous personality. We won't do a confession. They sometimes are hit by vehicles. I'm not going to do a little confessional here, but they have this weird, erratic running style. Like they will stop in the middle of the road. Have you seen that? Where they'll run for a little bit, stop. This is actually an adaptation. This is an adaptation for one of their predators, a natural predator. One of their big predators is a hawk, or the Cooper's hawk, or the red-shouldered hawks. These hawks go after them. And if a squirrel is going from point A to point B quickly, the hawk can intercept it by timing out. But if the squirrel is erratic in its movement, the hawk cannot time its attack as well. It's kind of interesting. Give them a few 100,000 more years. We'll see if they adapt to vehicles. But our squirrel, definitely one of our other urban critters. Name it if you know it. There's no children in here, so I can tell you my horrible joke. Why did the chicken cross the road? To prove, thank you. Also, I'll repeat it. To prove to the armadillo that it could be done. Horrible, horrible. Golly. Armadillos. They do quite well living with us, sometimes to our angst in our flower gardens. My goodness, they'll sometimes rip these up, take it as a compliment. They are utilizing the grubs that are in your lovely ecosystem. They have an adaptation. One of their adaptations, when they get startled, what they do is jump. They jump. Good, I saw it with your hand. They jump. And they jump up when they're startled with enough force to break the jaw of a potential predator, like a coyote or a bobcat or even wolves or bears or mountain lions. So their jump when they're startled is with enough force to break the jaws of a potential predator. Well, when you're driving down the road and they get spooked, sometimes they'll hit that grill too. So again, haven't adapted. The weirdest thing I think about these, not that, yes, they carry a bacteria that does carry leprosy. I know all that. But they have another weird characteristic. Every time, every time they give birth to 4 identical babies. Monozygotic polyembryony is what it's called. A single egg gets fertilized by a single sperm. They fuse and they go into 4 different chambers. Clones. These are clones. Every single time they give birth, it's to 4 identical babies. They're all the same gender. So they're either all male or they're all female. They have the same personality. They have the same eye color. I don't know if armadillos have different eye colors to begin with, but they're all identical. Is this not crazy? And it's one thing that we actually use this in the medical field. In the medical field, when we are testing out vaccines or different treatments, we have our control. We have vaccine A, vaccine B, and vaccine C, genetic identical, so you can get the good results to see which one is most effective when compared to the non-treatment. Isn't that interesting? Monozygotic polyembryony. Annoy your friends with that. Name this one if you know it. Anybody know this one? Raccoons. Yes. What'd you say, Rocky? Rocky raccoons, sure. Sometimes called trash pandas is another name that they have. Their little fingers are adapted. These are adaptations to prying open freshwater mussels, to digging into the water, finding those clams, and prying them open. So, do you think a Tupperware lid or a trash can lid is an issue for these? Absolutely not. This is a great urban critter that is adapted to living here with us and amongst us. How about this one? Possums. I did bring some show and tell. I didn't know if there would be kiddos here, but Cindy did say, oh no, you're dealing with someone more excited than kiddos. These are our people that are just coming to learn about critters. Here is our lovely possum. I love me a possum. They are phenomenal creatures. Whenever I see an adult opossum, I congratulate it. Every time I see an adult opossum, I congratulate it. If you don't know, they are marsupials. I think, as far as I know, the only marsupial that we have naturally here in Texas. The marsupium is the pouch that the female has. And inside of her pouch, kind of weird, there's 13 nipples. 12 of them in a circle and one in the middle. Go figure. So there are 13 nipples inside of that marsupial. When she gives birth to these little tiny lima bean shaped critters that are blind, they're furless, but they have arm muscles. Their first task in life, as they are bird, they come out, they go up into the marsupium to find one of those points of attachment. When she gives birth, she typically gives birth to about 20 babies at a time. 20 babies. Who here knows their math? You have 13 points of attachment and 20 babies. From day one, it is a struggle for existence. Next time you see an adult opossum, congratulate it. Congratulate it. It has made it from day one. Kind of a good thing about them too, they have a relatively low body temperature for mammals. So they are able to eat venomous snakes, of which they do. They do feed on our cottonmouths, our copperheads, our rattlesnakes. There is some really interesting studies that use that also show that there's low prevalence of rabies in these two. So even though it might be a face only a mom could love, they're good critters. They are really good critters to us for us in our urban ecosystem. Until they die. There you go. So in captivity, they can live decades, ridiculous time. And I just heard, and thank you for mentioning this. I need to look this up. Someone mentioned that they have indeterminate growth. In other words, they just keep growing and growing and growing and growing. I mean, they won't grow to be monstrous size because organ failure or whatever, but they keep growing and growing. And in captivity, they can live for decades. Out in the wild, I wouldn't predict it's very long. I just wouldn't predict it's very long. It's hard to be a wild critter. We'll talk about our predators next. But yeah, in captivity, they could just grow really, really long. But kind of an interesting thing about their little babies. Next time you see an adult, congratulate it. It made it. Okay. What do you think? Name it if you know it. Skunk, Pepe Le Pew, which if you've ever tried to rewatch Pepe Le Pew, that did not age well. Like that skunk wanted to mate with that cat. They are there. It's very uncomfortable to watch Pepe Le Pew. Um, has anybody had a fun experience of being sprayed or a dog being sprayed? Okay. Sure. Okay. Yes. Well, go get a leash. Okay, let's go lead it somewhere. Uh, yeah. So, and someone else, I saw another hand over here of having the experience of being sprayed or a dog being sprayed. It is a potent smell. It is potent. And the cartoons like Pepe Le Pew show a cloud. They just show this cloud. No, 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 no. This is a can of mace. And very interesting about skunks, and whoever took this picture, well done, buddy. They have an anal turret. This anal turret actually angles towards the face of the predator. So it has musculature that actually aims that can of mace. Aren't they just lovable? Golly, so cool. I do want to also mention this in north central Texas, the highest prevalency of rabies is with skunks. I mention that if you see one during the day, if you see one during the day, don't do anything. Don't try to go out there to shoot off the leash or anything. Leave it be. If you see one out during the day, maybe even give an animal control a call so they are aware of it. One of these out during the day is not probably a very healthy skunk. So the highest prevalency of rabies in north central Texas are skunks. They're mostly nocturnal. However, because of that nocturnal lifestyle, another cool adaptation besides the anal turret, they have aposematic coloring. The coloring on this thing, the big contrast between black and white, that is giving a signal. What's the signal? Stay away. Exactly right. Don't get close. It will cost you your nose. This one, believe it or not, yes, we do have these. Maybe some of you, has anybody seen them here in Grapevine before? Not in Grapevine? Well, like it or not, they are here. They are here in Grapevine. Our feral hogs, they do quite well living with us and amongst us. Believe it or not, here is the skull of one of our feral hogs. They do quite well with us. The Texas Parks and Wildlife worked with the city of Dallas in 2019 to start out their trapping program. And within the city of Dallas, that first year in 2019, we caught 1,100 hogs within the city of Dallas. Most of these were South Dallas, down by the Trinity River, but 1,100 hogs in Dallas. They live with us and amongst us. A real challenge to try to control. Texas Parks and Wildlife even allows now, if you want to shoot them from a hot air balloon, go for it. That used to be against the law. Now it's like, whatever. Dude, if that's what you want to do, whatever. They are really, really hard to control. And absolutely, absolutely. So anywhere where you have water, and to some people's a misfortune perhaps, golf courses. Golf courses have issues with hogs throughout the Metroplex. We work with quite a few golf courses on trying to control these. A pickle. It is a pickle. Great question. Very good answer. So the question is, what do they eat? And the answer, who said it over here? I heard everything. They are opportunistic omnivores. In other words, they can eat vegetation with their molars back here, but also meat with their incisors and canines. So they are omnivores. They will eat grubs, they'll eat worms, they'll eat ground nesting birds, they'll eat frogs, they'll eat snakes, they'll eat pretty much anything they can get their mouth on. And they're a real issue in Texas, throughout Texas. Name it if you know it. Has anybody ever seen one of these in real life? Show of hands. In real life? Yes. On the golf course, in your backyard, in your park, at your backyard with kittens too. A weird thing. Do you remember do you remember the pandemic? You remember 2020, the pandemic? People were forced to stay home. They were forced to stay home, and I got an uptick of calls about bobcats. And the calls weren't, hey, do something about this. The calls were, do you need to know that there is a wild cat in my backyard, a bobcat? As people were stuck home, they started to see things that had been coming to their yard every single day that were gone, that they never really noticed before. So, yes, bobcats live with us and amongst us. Texas Parks and Wildlife, the urban biologist before me actually did this study. They looked at the ranges of bobcats in urban areas, specifically in Arlington at a place called River Legacy Parks. It's a big park system, some of you may be aware. So they caught 13 bobcats and did a radio collar test on them. So they trap them, put these, sedate them, put these collars on them. They'd wake up and they'd go on their way. And we were able to track out how big their ranges were. Well, one of the bobcats got hit by a car. Boom. Stinks. It stinks. So we didn't get any more data from that from its collar. But what the biologists did is they did a necropsy. In other words, with that dead bobcat, they popped open its stomach. Inside of that one adult female stomach, 20 roof rats. What are these guys doing for us? Pest control. Pest control. They are eating some of the pests around here too. We were joking, someone was joking earlier about squirrels. How many squirrels exist out here? Well, one of the predators of squirrels, bobcats. So they are doing us a tremendous service. Name this one. Anybody know the name of this one? Coyote. A show of hands. How many of you have seen a coyote in real life before? Let me count them up real quick. All of you. Yes, we all have seen these coyotes. They live with us. They live amongst us. They are also omnivores. They will utilize whatever is available. If you're all right with it, let's talk about coyotes for a little bit. Where do you find them? North America. North America is where you find them pretty much anywhere in North America. They have dramatically spread their areas pretty much to throughout the area, and they've also colonized urban areas. So our urban coyotes tend to be resilient and opportunistic. Um, I don't mean to patronize you. Can anybody give me a good definition for opportunistic? What does that word mean? Anybody? Okay, okay, that's a specific example. All right, yes. Opportunistic. Anybody else have a definition for opportunistic? What do you think? Taking advantage of whatever walks in front of you. If the opportunity arises, it will utilize the opportunity. Maybe. And we'll talk about that in a second. So the diet can be varied. When I was working with a coyote trapper in Frisco, actually, he argued that a coyote can get nutrition out of styrofoam. And I don't know how true that is. It's probably some grease on the styrofoam or whatever. But the point is, they utilize whatever is available. Sometimes it walks in front of them. Sometimes it's a walking critter that leaves something somewhere and walks away, in the case of our garbage. They live anywhere, not an AI image. This is not AI. This was up in Portland at the MAX train at the international airport. One of these coyotes got on at one stop and got off at the next stop. I kid you not, this happened. So they are living anywhere in our urban area. They're not phased by human activity, human noises, as much as their rural cousins are. When I'm working with police officers and when we have an issue with coyotes, they'll sometimes say, you know, I honked my horn, I put on my siren, and it didn't phase the coyote. Well, those are normal noises. Those are normal noises for an urban coyote, for an urban critter, a horn honk or a siren. They're generally more nocturnal. Yes, sir.
We've seen a lot of major.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Yes, so the question was about mange. I'll come back to that. So they're generally more nocturnal. And I don't know, hopefully you're not out walking around at midnight or 1 in the morning, but if you were, you could probably see the sidewalk of where you walk. There's a lot of light pollution in Dallas Fort Worth. That's a lot of light pollution in Grapevine. So these guys are nocturnal. There's still a lot of light out in the middle of the night. They are in groups. They can be in groups, but generally small groups. So they're semi-gregarious. Usually it's a family unit. And some of you say, whoa, 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 whoa. I've heard 20 of them singing in the distance. It sounds like 20, and their name, Canis latrans, actually means singing dog. They have a whole repertoire of noises that they will use, different vocalizations, different volumes. So it sounds like a group of 20 or 30 in the distance. In reality, it's probably a small family unit of single individuals. They are density dependent. Let me describe this a little bit. When you remove one coyote from the ecosystem, it opens up that ecosystem for more coyotes to come. Much like squirrels, yeah, you remove one, 10 of them show up. The same thing with coyotes. And I know I shouldn't personify it, but it's kind of interesting when they sing to each other. The females actually listen to the songs, and if they don't hear many songs back, they ovulate more. They ovulate more with the understanding, hey, there's not a lot of babies around there, so I can pop out more babies because of the excess resources. Density dependent. When you remove one from the ecosystem, more of them come in. A lot of people, when there are issues with coyotes, say, well, let's just get rid of that one. Well, you can, but there were more that come in to those areas. Do coyotes attack pets? Let's start with pets. They do happen. These guys are opportunistic omnivores. They're carnivores too. And I mean, no disrespect. If any of you own chihuahuas, how does nature look at a chihuahua? That's, yeah, snack. That's a big rat. That is a big rat, a big, plump, juicy rat. So it does happen. And I got to say, one of my least favorite parts of my job is sometimes answering the phone. When I get a call from a person that said, hey, my cat didn't come home, or a coyote got my dog, it's a bummer. I hate that. I don't know how many of you have pets. You were mentioning your dogs earlier. You love those dogs. You love them. So they're critter getters. You're right, but you love your pets. They have no relation to us. They have no genetic relation to us, but we love these creatures. When I get calls about their little cat getting eaten by a coyote or dog getting eaten, it breaks my heart. I couldn't imagine my cats getting eaten by a coyote. I'm sure it's horrible, but it does happen. It does happen. What some people do, as they're going to a dog park, they will put this on their dog. I guarantee that dog is getting made fun of by the other dogs at the dog park. Probably not too effective either. Well, maybe, or maybe mess with this part of them. I don't know. Do coyotes attack people? With confidence, before 2019, I said with certainty, no, it does not happen. And I had precedents. I had evidence to go along with that. My evidence was zero point 0.0 recorded attacks of coyotes on people in Texas. My wife and I were eating dinner at, I think it was Subway, and I was watching television. I was watching the news, and there was a news story about third jogger in Frisco attacked by coyote. Do you remember hearing about this? The Frisco coyotes? Okay, some of you do remember this story. As I saw it on the news, I said, darn it, another dog attack that's getting blamed on coyotes. If you watch an episode of Judge Judy, I promise you, you're going to see a dog attack case. It happens daily. In the United States and Texas, probably too, dog attacks happen all of the time. So as I listened to this story, I went up to Frisco. I talked to the first lady that was bitten by the coyote. She was bitten twice. The first bite was on her calf. She was a small lady. She was running at 5:30 in the morning, had her earphones in, just jogging around the park. It was a relatively safe park in Frisco. The first bite, on the calf. The next bite, on the neck. I know. She showed me this, and I was looking at it with sympathy, with empathy, and I said, "Oh, what a horrible experience." In the back of my mind, I was still thinking, "This sounds like dog. This sounds like dog." At 5:30 in the morning, any coyote-shaped dog looks like a coyote. So I was still thinking dog here. I came up the next morning, early morning. This is El Dorado Parkway. There's a little intersecting road here. I was down underneath the bridge looking for, I mean, you already know me. I'm looking for crickets. I'm looking for turtles and stuff. And as I stand up, there are two coyotes about 30 yards away that snuck up on me. One of the coyotes did what a coyote does. What does a coyote normally do? You see the tail of a coyote, boom, it's gone. The other coyote took 2 steps forward. And then I said, "Oh boy," I remembered my training. I was thinking about the lady that had the wound in her neck. But I remember my training. I did my, hey, oh, hey. I scared it off. But it told me, holy moly, we have an issue in Frisco with coyotes. If you haven't been to Frisco lately, if you go to Frisco one week and go the next week, it looks different. There is so much development in Frisco, and all that whole part of north central Texas is growing like crazy. These little dinky towns, Prosper, Anna, they are blowing up with population. And because of that population growth, individuals are pushed in an area, individuals of coyotes, but also all of the construction. There's a lot of refuse being left out. And I'm not going to name names, but as I interviewed several of the neighbors, they were pointing fingers at a person that was actively feeding the coyotes. So the coyotes weren't looking at us as food items, they were looking at us as food dispensers. So, kind of an interesting thing. What happened in this case, the Wildlife Services, the USDA Wildlife Services, a federal agency, came in, did a cull of about 20 coyotes. 20 coyotes were removed from the ecosystem. Anybody remember what I said earlier? Density dependent, coyotes removed. Well, as I kept going back up to Frisco, I was seeing more and more evidence of coyotes. Fortunately, knock on wood, we changed our behavior, controlling garbage, stopping the feeding of it, hazing techniques. And so far, we have not had any issues in Frisco since then. A couple years ago in Dallas, there was another case of a little kiddo getting bitten by a coyote. I don't know if anybody heard about this story. Some people did. This, as an urban biologist, let me just tell you, fascinating. This was a group of coyotes, we think 3 or 4 coyotes, 3 really, that were adapted to COVID. They were adapted to COVID. Whoa, 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 what do you mean? During COVID, during the coronavirus, we typically weren't going out to eat. We were having our food delivered. We would call up a DoorDash, they would come, they would bring the food to our front door and then leave. In this area, these coyotes were adapted to DoorDashes. A person would come, deliver the Subway, put it on the door, leave. The coyote would run up, grab the Subway, and run off. There's some fat, and part of me just goes, this is so freaking awesome. This is so cool. And they have ring footage of the coyotes doing this, that the DoorDash people would dump the food off and leave. The coyotes run up, grabbed it, and leave too. In this one case, there was a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. 2-year-old kiddo is named Knox. Ran outside, and I hated that the mom got so much crap during this time. Has anybody ever had a toddler before? You know, if you close your eyes for 2 minutes, where did that toddler go? No one knows. Anywhere. Exactly right. So this all happened in just a couple minutes. A 2-year-old and a 5-year-old ran outside. These adapted coyotes to DoorDashes saw the opportunity, came up, grabbed the kid actually by the head, grabbed him and started dragging him off. Let me just say the kid is fine. Knox is fine. And part of me just fantasizes that this kid is going to be the next coyote expert. He's going to be like the legendary coyote biologist. We'll see. I'm sure it was a traumatic experience for everybody. But just 2 minutes is all that took. The mom ran outside, did her hollering. The coyote dropped the kid. They ran off. In this case, we were quick to action and removed those coyote individuals, changing our behavior of picking up DoorDashes and all that stuff too. So what do? If you see a coyote, and most of my job is this, is getting people off the ledge. If you see a coyote, if you see a bobcat, if you see a raccoon, it's okay. It is okay that you see a wild critter that's lived here for millennia. So just by seeing one is not reason to freak out. If you see one, it's not reason to freak out. And I would even argue if you see one during the day, it's not necessarily a reason to freak out. During the day, perhaps it was sleeping in an area that there was a leaf blower. Woke it up, it was looking for a new area. This time of year, they sometimes change their behavior. They're out looking for food more during the day too. But so just by seeing one during the day, not a reason to freak out. Don't feed the wildlife. Especially in the cases of our mesocarnivores like bobcats and coyotes, you change their behavior. You change their behavior when you feed them. And I know what it's like. You throw out a few table scraps. So feeding indirectly can also be a culprit to this. So, and I can get on my knees if I need to. Please don't feed the wildlife. It's not a good thing for wildlife. When I get the calls about the missing cat or the dead dog, I don't say this, but responsible pet ownership is so important. Oh my goodness, it is the most important thing. Those leash laws exist. I don't mean to patronize you, but those leash laws exist for the health of your dog. So responsible pet ownership, crucially important. The next thing is something that actually, why don't we, Cindy? Okay, I want everybody to get off of your chairs. We're going to do a hazing technique together. So I want everybody off of their chairs to stand up, okay? Now, the first thing for hazing, what we do is we clap our hands. So go ahead and clap your hands. Good. All right. And now the next thing that we do is we stomp our feet. If you feel comfortable doing it, stomp your feet. Good. And now the next thing we do is we say, no, no, coyote, no, as loud, or try to do as loud. Ready? No, no, coyote, no. Now what we want to do is all three of those at once. All right, ready? So 1, 2, 3. No, no, coyote, no. Good. You can sit down. You can sit down. So what does this do? What does this do? When we do this, we reinforce the natural fear that coyotes have of their natural predators. These guys, coyotes, were not living as apex predators. No, 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 no. They grew up with mountain lions, with wolves. They were never top of the food chain. So when we do those sort of things, we are reenacting those big scary critters that these guys grew up with. So as you do this, you may think it's cruel to do these sort of things. It's very important. And I'm not doing that just for you. I'm doing this as your neighbors say, hey, there's a problem, Coyote. What should you do? And you're going to remember, you know what? I remember doing that goofy song and dance. That's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. So please, Hayes, it does work. How many of you have heard coyotes before? Have you ever heard them? You know, it's silly. I live in on East Fort Worth, Arlington area, and every once in a while I will hear coyotes. And if just for a moment I will close my eyes, yeah, I'll hear the other urban noises of cars and planes, but I will hear the same noises that serenaded the early explorers, the same noises that the early indigenous people would go to sleep. I get to hear those exact same noises when you listen to coyotes. For me, I think that is a beautiful thing. They are true remnants of the past that live with us and amongst us. And I think that's worthy of celebration. Oops. Okay, so finally, um, what do you want to do? What can you do if you see cool critters? One of the most beautiful tools that I use is iNaturalist. Has anybody heard of iNaturalist before? It is an app. It's an app. So iNaturalist, there's an app for that where I go around and take pictures of things and I upload that data where scientists can use it throughout the world, really. 3.5 million users, 224 million observations. There's an app for it. I won't go over the nitty-gritty details of it, but essentially, I'll see a little butterfly, I'll see a moth, I'll see a bug, I'll see a track, I'll see scat on the trail, crap, on the trail. I will take a picture of that. I'll take a picture of that, I'll upload it, and it puts a dot on the map of where and when that thing was found in space and in time. One of the parts that blows my mind is the photo recognition. So as I'm taking pictures of unknown weeds in my garden, I will take a picture, it will use the pixels of that image, it'll use the location, the date, and it gives me suggestions of what it is. To me, this is mind-blowing technology. It is mind-blowing. They're just suggestions, though. In this case, I saw this outside of my office on July 11th, 2017 at Cedar Hill State Park. It gave me the top suggestion of trumpet vine. Boom, nailed it. Gave me a third suggestion of poison oak. Now, part of me scoffs and go, Mr. Computer, you're so stupid. But when I look at the picture, I can see leaves of three. So in other words, it's just suggestions of what we may see. If you're not into giving some of that data of where you are, when you are, or if you have little kiddos, or if you just want to play, there's another app called Seek that utilizes the same technology as iNaturalist, but doesn't give that data point. It's best for naturalists under 13 years old. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares about your favorite fill in the blank, favorite animal, favorite plant? Who cares? Well, let me tell you a little bit of the relevancy of these things. By seeing biodiversity, when we see a lot of bugs, it means that there's a lot of things that eat those bugs. It means that there's a lot of birds. If we see a lot of bugs, it means there's a lot of plants. When we see a lot of plants, it means cleaner air and cleaner water. So these ecosystem functions are correlated with the biodiversity that we see in the ecosystem. So by seeing a lot of different things in your area, in your landscape, in your park, it means it's a healthier park, healthier for the critters and healthier for you too. And while I'm up on my philosophical pedestal, let me just say, this honeybee, this swallowtail, this Rheakurt's blue, this little dandelion, this bindweed, they have struggled for existence, just as we have. They've struggled for existence. Yeah, we've waged war, we've garnered peace, we've fallen in love, we've fallen out of love, we've written poetry about it all. This little longhorn beetle has struggled for existence here on the planet too. So for me, I think it's a beautiful example of sharing this urban ecosystem with so many different other things. I went way long, forgive me. If you have any questions, any comments, we'll talk about mange in a second. But if you do have any questions or comments, here is my contact information. I asked the state for the longest possible email address, and they gave it to me. So it is my name at tpwd.texas.gov. But a question I'd like to address first, mange. Have you heard about this? Do you know what mange is? Mange breaks my heart. Mange breaks my heart. Mange comes from an organism. Pretty much any mammal actually can get mange. We can get mange too. Dogs can get mange as well. But coyotes, they will get mange. It's spread by a mite, and it causes an immune response that they will lose a lot of their hair. They look just horrible. Mange is how nature controls the population. Mange is cruel. It stinks. Those coyotes that have lost their fur, nature has selected them to die. And we are watching it with that mange. Now, there are things that people do, especially if they're dogs. You were talking about dogs. When dogs get mange, there are treatments that we do. There are some people that have tried to treat coyotes with mange, but it is just nature's way of selecting against these organisms. One thing that we have done, though, is we have weakened the immune system of many of our mesocarnivores. When we use pesticides to get rid of rats, sometimes the rats will still have that pesticide within them. If you've read Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, talking about DDT and how it continues in the ecosystem, well, with our pesticides, our herbicides, our poisons that we use, the critters that eat the things that are poisoned, that can weaken their immune system. So mange, it's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing to see. And unfortunately, that's just how nature selects against organisms.
You're
Please.
seeing coyotes, more coyotes with lately.
So I think we're getting more reports of it. So I think we're getting, as DFW gets more people, more eyes out there. So I think we're getting more reports of it. I don't know if we can correlate that to being more mange. I think it's just something that exists in the ecosystem. Nature is selecting against these things. What I tell people to do, I don't ever really have a good answer for it. I just say that's kind of how nature works. With other critters that have mange, they don't live as long. With our coyotes, here's a coyote skull. With our coyotes being opportunistic omnivores, they are resilient. So even one that is diseased with mange still exists for a while. It still exists a while until that cold snap or extra warm snap or whatever it might be. That's a bummer. Yeah, sorry. Death. Let's talk about death. Yay, death. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Foxes. We were talking about foxes earlier. So I left out 10,100 and probably 20 things in my presentation here. Let's see. Here it is. So I left out a good 10,000 critters. Foxes. Foxes do exist. And one of my favorite things to do is put up trail cams. Gosh, do I love trail cams. Great, I know it's past Christmas, but go ahead and give it to your loved one or anybody. It's a great surprise gift. A trail cam. If you put up these trail cams, you might be surprised that foxes are still around. They are so secretive. Oh my goodness. It's almost like if they don't want to be seen, they are not seen. So foxes are still here. They are still present. We still see them throughout DFW. We still get a lot of reports on them. So again, I don't know if there's a lot of evidence to say that they're decreasing in numbers. They may be changing some of their behaviors though to being more secretive. Trail cams are so much fun though to set up. Good question. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Good. Keeps the neighbors away too, which is great. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's so funny. Who would have thought a fox attractant attracts foxes? You're right. So chemical communication is pretty amazing. There is another language that exists that's chemistry. Bugs utilize it, bugs sense the chemistry, but the sense of so many things. With dogs, they train dogs to smell anything, anything. It's because they have these long noses with a more surface area with a lot more chemoreceptors. So some things that threaten or scare off another critter may attract something else. So yeah, we have at our house, we're having kind of an issue with some feral cats that are coming around. So I have used some fox urine before on my trail cam. Guess what I see more of? Foxes, which I welcome, which I'm like, cool. But that does happen. Good point. Yes, yes. So it helps with the feral cats. So the feral cats are going away. The foxes are coming through. So the foxes themselves may be coming. Well, yes, ma'am.
In our yard, I encouraged my husband to water.
Sure. Okay. Good. So our sense. So with our sense, yes, I know. I've tried that with the cats. It doesn't work with cats. So as we mark our territory, our scents are becoming more and more familiar to urban critters. So maybe out in the wilderness that could scare other critters. No, some of them are used to our sewage smell anyway. So yeah, good point. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Please. Yeah, so let's talk about mountain lions. Mountain lions have made a little bit of a news splash recently. We were actually able to verify mountain lions, or I should say, a mountain lion. Mountain lions, they're fascinating. God, I love mountain lions. Mountain lions, the young males, I'll come back to this specific story, but young males have ranges of 200 miles. So they can wander. My goodness, can they wander? So we have known breeding populations in Texas, the Trans-Pecos, and down in southeast or southwest Texas by Laredo area. We have those known breeding populations of mountain lions. What was it, a month ago? Maybe a month ago or so. There was some trail cam pictures on the east side of Lake Louisville, or I'm sorry, first was the west side of Lake Louisville, and then we had an observation in Frisco that we verified, taking measurements of all that stuff. We got it in Plano, right off of what is that, 75, 175, and then finally in Tawakoni, and then in where did it? Tyler, I think it was down in Tyler. In a month, it went 87 miles. We think it's the same individual. Went 87 miles, boom, was hit by a police officer driving. Kind of an interesting case. First of all, it isn't anyone's trophy kill, which we're kind of excited by that because we can take the genetic evidence for it. We can do the necropsy. We can do all of these sort of stuff, liver studies with it to see if toxins were in its bloodstream. But that was the one individual that we knew of. It was a female, which is very odd. We don't typically see those dispersing. Um, yeah. So, right. So we get a lot of calls about mountain lions. And based on the calls that I get, we are overwhelmed with mountain lions. My God, there are so many mountain lions based on the calls I get. Holy moly! All around White Rock Lake. They may be black, they have collars on them, but they're mountain lions. Those are mountain lions. I bring this up. My wife is a crime scene investigator. She's a CSI. It sounds like a cool job. It's a lot of just dead babies and dead people. But she never takes anyone's word. She goes to a scene and she studies the evidence, just the evidence. That's what she does. As a biologist, that's kind of where I have to be. And I know it's less serious of something. Mountain lions. I get a lot of claims of mountain lions, but so far in my tenure, which has been 8 years, we've been able to verify two in the Metroplex. One in Frisco that was harvested up in Celeste. This was 3 years ago, maybe, and then this last one. Yeah, so those two. So are they out there? Maybe, maybe. I want to see. I want to see pictures. I got to get that extra evidence. And even after we got those records of mountain lions, what we did is we went out there, we measured the grasses. We measured these things. We had to go out and make sure it wasn't AI, artificial technology, artificial whatever, you know. When I get a picture of a mountain lion, the first thing I do is a Google image reverse search. So I take the image that they give me, and most of the cases are mountain lions from California. I link them right that. It's like, oh, no, 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 that's what I saw. This is just a picture of it. No, 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 that's a picture of one in California. Now, anyway, so it's just evidence that we need. But are they out there? Potentially. Potentially. There may be individuals, but I have to get that hard evidence. Yes, ma'am, please. Hundreds. Hundreds of miles. Absolutely. And honestly, that one that we saw and that we were able to verify on the west side of Lake Louisville, I thought, okay, that's the last we'll hear about it. They're sometimes called the ghost cat, this apex predator called the ghost cat, because like a ghost, they just go through an area with almost no one seeing. So we know those breeding populations in Texas, but Texas is a big state too. I have loosened my interpretation. In the past, I was pretty quick with shotting down. You probably didn't see a mountain lion, but now I'm a little bit. My ears are open a little bit more. So if you hear someone that says I've seen a mountain lion, or if you too have seen a mountain lion, for as a biologist, I need proof. I need a picture. I need the tracks to do a measurement of how big that critter was. Yeah, I think one more question. Anybody else have another question? Yes, sir, please. Sure. Yeah. These eagles, God, are they frustrating. So bald eagles, these dumb couple. This dumb couple put a nest right there off Loop 12 Buckner, literally in the worst spot. They put it on a dead branch of a cottonwood tree. A couple years ago, that branch fell. The eggs were cracked. Really unfortunate. They have made another nest. They did have a successful nest last year, had a juvenile, and I think a couple weeks ago, I don't know if I have the email here, they're sitting on something. So they are there. I think they've renamed them Nick and Nora. I think that's the name people have given them. But the two adults, they're sitting on something up there still in White Rock Lake. What is that, Lakeside? I don't remember the exact name of the park up there, but you can still see it from Loop 12. Yeah, they're there. Yep. And bald eagles, that's a success story, my friends. That is a success story. In the past, you wouldn't see bald eagles in Texas. Just you wouldn't see them. And now we have got breeding pairs almost at all of our bigger reservoirs. Our lakes have breeding pairs. That's something worthy of. I don't know, but I can almost guarantee that they're using Grapevine as a hunting ground. If they're not nesting here, potentially they will be in the future. Yeah. So it's a big success story. With that, I'll go back. If you have any other questions, my contact information is there. I'm on that tool, iNaturalist. Sam Biology is my username. Thank y'all so much for your time tonight. Be be safe tomorrow. Go out, make a snowman, throw a snowball at a stranger. Strangers love that. So thank you.